Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd and this is my review of episode 4 of season 4 of Lower Decks called Something Borrowed, Something Green, which I guess refers to the Orions. And I think it was kind of the weakest episode of this season. A lot of the jokes didn't work for me personally. Maybe I'm not getting something, especially all the Mark Twain parts. I'm not sure what was supposed to be that funny about it. But anyway, the episode begins with that same small ship which is destroying random ships in the galaxy, and I still suspect it's probably a ship from the future just by the fact that no one thinks it's a powerful ship because it's so small. It's like the size of a shuttle, and yet it easily blows up any other ship it encounters. And some people speculate it might be Boimler's evil transporter duplicate who joins Section 31, so maybe it's their secret ship. But why would they be randomly flying around blowing up alien ships? So it doesn't really make much sense. So my personal hunch is still that it's some kind of ship from the future because, it's so small that no one suspects it might be powerful. And also it has some design similarities to some of the ships we saw from the future. In Voyager we saw future ships having purple lights. And those curved lines kind of reminds me of some of the Suliban designs in those rooms in which they talked with Future Guy. So maybe Future Guy is on that ship, maybe we'll get a voice cameo by Scott Bakula. So it might be fun to wrap up that loose end from Enterprise. I mean, why not? They'll probably never do an official continuation of it, so doing it, even if it's in a silly way, it might be fun in my opinion. So anyway, this time it's an Orion ship, and as always we see the lower decks crew of that ship. And then they encounter that small ship which easily destroys them. And meanwhile on the Cerritos, Tandy is invited to her sister's wedding on Orion, and Mariner wants to go with her to get away from Boimler and Rappaport, who started acting weird ever since they became roommates. They kind of became best buddies kind of too much in a creepy way. And at some point in the episode they start arguing over some silly small detail, and then they go to the holodeck. And both of them go dressed as Mark Twain, and then they start arguing, but then they're still debating, talking in a Mark Twain kind of way, and then they settle their differences. I personally didn't find it that funny. I'm not sure what was supposed to be that funny about those scenes. Then we see the planet Orion, and they land there, and apparently Tandy is from some super rich family, and they're being carried around by slaves and all of that. And they go to some nightclub, and the city kind of looks like Blade Runner. And I love how the Orion guards are bald with metal things in their heads. That's actually exactly how the Orion males look like in Enterprise when we saw them in a few episodes of Enterprise. And yet in other Star Trek shows that was ignored, and suddenly they have normal hair. And so I love how in this show they're doing it all. They're uniting all the Star Trek shows together and showing all the different variety, and not just picking one and sticking with it as if everyone are the same. And so they're kind of fixing the continuity issues by doing this, by showing all the different versions of Orions. And they also poke fun at that Enterprise episode when they reveal that the Orion females are controlling their society and not the men, because the females have some special pheromone that brainwash all the males and all of that. So they show in this episode that only some of the Orion women can do that, and not all of them. And so that's another example of how this show is kind of respecting all the continuity from all the different Star Trek shows and not ignoring anything, and kind of putting it all together and simply showing the variety of the species, that not all of them are the same. And so they're kind of poking fun at it, but also respecting the continuity at the same time. So anyway, they go into this bar, and Tandy meets some old friend of her who throws a knife and it hits Mariner. And that's a joke that is kind of repetitive in this episode, that everywhere they go someone always throws a knife, and it always hits Mariner in the shoulder. And Tandy gets into a drinking match against some other woman, and there's some kind of deadly killer bug who is biting their hand if they don't succeed. And there's that small force field, which once again is made of hexagons, which for some reason in all the Star Trek shows recently, that's the way force field look like now. It's always the same shape, no matter what time period it's in, so that's always kind of strange to me. And meanwhile on the Cerritos they want to scan some nebula, but there's that alien who interferes with them. For some reason he's really angry, and that's the same type of alien that we saw, I think only once we saw him in the TNG episode Allegiance, and he was really angry. It's like an exaggerated version of a Klingon, and I actually kind of like that design, and yet we never saw another alien like him until now. So it's not the same character, but it's from the same species, and he's being super angry for no reason. And then Boimler decides to invite him to the holodeck to play as Mark Twain because that's what helped him and Rappaport settle their differences. And so they're trying to do the same with this alien. And again, I don't really get the joke and the humor of this. And later on, they show him that little tree, which is the reason that the Boimler and Rappaport were arguing. And then he eats that tree, and then he's happy and is willing to let them scan the nebula. And what I did like about this alien is how they kind of showed as if he only cares about people thinking he's so tough and scary. He's not really that evil. He actually has a heart of gold. He just really wants people to be afraid of him. And I went back and rewatched some of the scenes in the TNG episode Allegiance with that kind of alien, and it did make me laugh because if you rewatch that episode, you do notice that that alien does seem to really care about what they think of him. Like, he's all angry, but there are moments in which you can actually see in the dialogue that he only cares about them thinking he's so tough and scary. Like, he keeps bragging about himself, how he slayed all his enemies, and then he asks that ensign, does that scare you? And she says a little, and then she asks someone else, does that scare you too? So it was really funny to me to go back to that episode to see that it does seem as if that alien only really cares about what they think of him. He wants people to think he's so tough and scary when he's actually not. And so I do think they kind of nailed it in these scenes in which he just wants people to respect his scariness. And he's not really that angry as he pretends to be. So going back to the episode Allegiance and seeing those scenes did make it much funnier. And so as always, this show is really good, not just by showing all the references visually, but also getting what was so fun about it in the first place, and playing around with it, and even adding stuff to it. And so this scene with this alien made those parts in the episode Allegiance much funnier looking back at it now. So anyway, back on Orion, they finally find her sister, and then it's revealed that she actually kidnapped herself because she was so angry about Tandy leaving the planet. And then they fight, and then they settle their differences, and then they go back in time to the wedding, and there's a happy ending. So nothing really amazing in this episode. Some of these jokes with Tandy being so nerdy and gentle when in Starfleet, and yet on her own planet she's such a tough badass. We've seen the same kind of joke in previous seasons whenever she met other Orions, and suddenly she's behaving really tough like a pirate and all of that. But then is worried about what her Starfleet friends will think about her. We saw that kind of thing before, so it wasn't really that fresh. In this episode, it's basically the same idea again. And some of the jokes were just not that funny, especially the Mark Twain jokes to me were not funny. I did love the part with the alien because it was so faithful to the TNG version of him, which is the only time we ever saw that species, so it was fun to see it again. And they did it in a way that made the original funnier, because if you watch those scenes from Allegiance, Esok does seem to really care about what they think of him. He wants them to be scared of him. And I wonder how come they never brought back that species, because I actually kind of like that design, maybe except the hair. His hair kind of reminds me of Dr. Crusher for some reason. I think I once made the TNG edit when I showed that after she got sprayed by Worf's acid and had to have reconstructive surgery, she actually became that alien. And he talked with her voice as if it's her, so I think I made the joke of that because his hair was so similar to her hair, so I made it as if it is actually her in one edit of mine. And I will link the playlist to all my old TNG edits in the end of this video for those who haven't seen it or want to watch it again, so I'll put it in the end of this video. So that's all I wanted to say about it for now. Let me know what you think and we can discuss it all in the comments below, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.